So, this is the last part about Seneca on anger. So, it is about anger management using Stoicism and or just in the eyes of Stoicism. And I do want to point out that it is not some woo-woo philosophical BS stuff there. On the very bottom of this page, I have seen that there's even like some sort of a bullet list with some tips. And I gotta have to say, like, this is quite not only the exact same things that you're seeing in modern age articles on anger management. It's quite it. It's actually very interesting how less has changed. And yeah, anyway, I'm going to read. I'm going to wrap up my extended commentary of Seneca's pivotal essay on anger, which is one of the most important Stoics texts you'll ever read, not to mention one of the most useful. Book 3 opens up with Seneca telling his friend Novatus that it is now time to turn to the practical issue of how to drive anger away, which is, I think, the most interesting one. This may sometimes be done, and this is a quote, openly and without concealment when we are only suffering from a slight attack of this mischief or mischief, and at other times it must be done secretly when our anger is excessively hot and when every obstacle thrown in its way increases it and makes it blaze higher. He continues, this is a quote again, "The eager and self-destructive violence of anger does not grow up by slow degrees, but reaches its full height as soon as it begins. Nor does it, like other vices, merely disturb men's minds, but it takes them away and torments them till they are incapable of restraining themselves and eager for the common ruin of all men, nor does it rage merely against its object, but against every obstacle which it encounters on its way. Other vices affect our judgment, anger affects our sanity. Others come in mild attacks and grow unnoticed, but man's minds plunge abruptly into anger. Its intensity is in no way regulated by its origin, for it rises to the greatest heights from the most trivial beginnings." Not only is Seneca here giving what I think is a correct psychological description of anger, but it should be very clear now why the Stoics thought that anger is particularly pernicious among the negative passions, or pathei, and consequently why they wrote so much about it. And Seneca isn't worried just about the effect of anger on individuals, but on entire people. And this is a quote, "Ambassadors are outraged, the law of nations violated, and an unnatural madness seizes the state without allowing time for the general excitement to subside. Fleets are straightway launched and laden with a hastily enrolled solidarity." This is a crucial point for two reasons. First, the obvious one, that the Stoics concerned themselves with both the welfare of the individual and with that of society at large. Indeed, the two were not seen as distinct or opposite as in our dichotomy of altruism and selfishness. Since living according to nature means to apply reason to social life, for the Stoics, a person's problem was society's problem and vice versa. Second, it is clear for this passage that when they talked about anger, the Stoics didn't refer to the sudden rush of adrenaline we experience in certain situations and which we cannot avoid or control. Rather, they focused on the implicit or explicit cognitive judgment that follows such rush and that tells us, yes, there is a good reason why I'm angry, period. The outrage of ambassadors is a mental state that is prolonged over time, far outlasting the initial hormonal burst of this construal of the passions as cognitive judgment, and the idea that the Stoics got the basics of human psychology right. See this essay. Yeah, and I think this is also one of the reasons why this philosophy is also quite interesting, because psychology is something that's interesting, you know? Even though it is interesting to some degree, that I would say that it is some cliche thing that people just want to study psychology. But anyway, anger is incompatible with love, he warns. And this is a quote, "Anger pays a penalty at the same moment that it exacts one. It forswears human feelings. The later urge us to love, anger urges us to hatred, and the later bids us do man good, anger bid us do them harm. How far more glorious it is to throw back all wrong and insults from oneself, like one wearing armor of proof against all weapons for revenge, is an admission that we have been hurt, which dovetails nicely with the Stoic treatment of insults. And yes, I totally believe in that. I mean, if you're able to just wear it off and just protect yourself from it in some way, this feels cool, and this feels great, and this feels strong, rather than just trying to take revenge and stuff like that. Third book, 8th page. Makes the interesting suggestion that anger, or conversely serenity, may be infective, and so that we should choose our company carefully. We should live with the quietest and easiest tempered persons, not with anxious or with sullen ones, for our own habits are copied from those with whom we associate, and just as some bodily diseases are communicated by touch, so also the mind transfers its vices to its neighbors, virtues to the same thing in the opposite direction, and improves all those with whom they are bought in contract. For more on choosing one's company, see this essay on Epictetus. I didn't know that they were talking about so many practical things. I knew that it is somehow practical, but not that practical. Or maybe even direct. Maybe direct is just a word that I'm searching for. I don't know. And here's an example of cognitive modification of our behavior from the end of the 3rd book and 8th page. And this is a quote. Whenever a controversy seems likely to be longer or more keenly disputed than usual, let us check its first beginnings before it gathers strength. A dispute nourishes itself as it proceeds, and taken hold of those who plunge too deeply into it. It is easier to stand aloof than to extricate oneself from a struggle. Boy, have I found this to be true in my own experience repeatedly. So I want to repeat it once again. Whenever a controversy seems likely to be longer or more keenly disputed than usual, let us check its first beginning before it gathers strength. A dispute nourishes itself as it proceeds, and it takes hold of those who plunge deeply into it. So, if you're angry and if you're noticing it, this is, the first sign of, okay, you should step back if you notice that something is happening or maybe going to happen. More practical advice at the 3rd book, 9th page. Pythagoras used to calm his troubled spirit by playing upon the lure. Green is good for worried eyes, and some colors are grateful to weak sight, while the brightest of other pain is while the brightness of others is painful to it, and we ought to less to avoid bodily weariness, for it exhausts all that is quiet and gentle in us and rouses bitterness. Hunger also and thirst should be avoided for the same reason. They exasperate and irritate men's minds. It is an old saying that a weary man is quarrelsome. And yes, this is definitely the case. And this is something that I'm noticing when I'm in my fast, that even though I don't want to say that I'm getting angry some stuff, or just very easily angry, not necessarily, but just I'm getting easy angry than when I'm satiated or when I've eaten something. But I do just notice that, my threshold is a little bit lower. A little bit lower, because there is, I don't know, I think the more pain one is feeling, or the more discomfort, the higher the chance, or the lower the threshold, so the higher the chance that you're angry. Another time-tested approach to diffuse anger is humor, particularly the self-deprecative variety. There are many ways in which anger may be checked. Most things may be turned into jest, or jest, whatever. It is said that Socrates, when he was giving a box on the ear, merely said that it was a pity a man could not tell when he ought to wear his helmet out walking. Actually a cool one. Some people actually actively seek ways to anger themselves. A large part of mankind, and this is a quote, manufactures their own grievances either by entertaining unfounded suspicions or by exaggerating trifles. An overweening conceit of our own importance makes us prone to anger, and we are quite willing to do to others what we cannot endure should be done to ourselves. Yeah. The 12th page, by the way. So what to do then? ? Delay is the best remedy for it, because it allows its first glow to subside and gives time for the cloud which darkens the mind either to disperse or at any rate to become less dense. 13th page. Seneca even advises us to trick our own mind into letting go of anger by changing our posture, movement, and voice. Let us conceal its symptoms and, as far as possible, keep it secret and hidden. It will give us great trouble to do this, for it is eager to burst forth. to kindly our eyes and to transform our face, but if we allow it to show itself in our outward appearance, it is our master. Let us replace all its symptoms by the opposites. Let us make our countenance more composed than usual, our voice milder and step slower. Our inward thoughts gradually become influenced by our outward demeanor. Several following sections of the book 3 shift from a concern with regular folks to one for kings, whose anger can obviously have far dire consequences for a far large number of people. I will skip many of the questions or quotations in that part of anger, though there should be mandatory reading for world leaders today. Still, the interested reader will enjoy section 3 or section 19 in particular, entirely devoted to Julius Caesar, who, of course, was the archenemy of Cato the Younger, one of the major Stoic role models frequently mentioned by Seneca. Throughout those sections, Seneca discusses in detail both examples of power people prone to anger, Caesar, and of others who resisted it, and then uses it later as models for our own behavior. And this is a quote right now. Let everyone then say to himself, whenever he is provoked, am I more powerful than Philip of Macedonia, Alexander's grandfather? Yet he allowed a man to curse him with impunity. Have I more authority in my own house than the Emperor Augustus, Octavian, Caesar's adoptive son, possessed throughout the world? Yet he was satisfied with leaving the society of his maligna. Another approach to control anger at other people's behavior is going through a checklist regarding the person that is allegedly offending us. Is this his first offense? Think how long he has been acceptable. Has he often done wrong, and in many other cases? Then let us continue to bear what we have borne so long. Is he a friend? Then he did not intend to do it. Is he an enemy? Then he did it. He did this duty. Whatever he may be, let us say to ourselves on his behalf that even the wisest of men are often in fault, that no one is so alert that his carefulness never betrays itself, and that no one is so ripe at judgment that his serious mind cannot be goaded by circumstances into some hot-heated action, that, in fine, at last, no one, however much he may fear to give offense, can help doing so when even while he tries to avoid it. This is, I find, truly mind-blowing. It is in its magnanimity toward other human beings, as well as the tight logic displayed by these short phrases. And I do want to point out, it is always a good way to think like, maybe the person didn't mean it. Maybe the person just wasn't doing this on purpose. Maybe this person, whatever, like first of all in this sense, but also in what he's talking about quite primarily, that, okay, we all make mistakes. I've also done mistakes in my life. I'm gonna forgive this person because I know that we make mistakes. I know that we human beings, we're not perfect. And so I'm gonna forgive this person. No matter what this person did, I'm gonna forgive this person. And it is out of place to look at a bit in the mirror as well, or to look a bit into the mirror as well. And this is a quote. Let us look back upon our own youth and think how often we there were too slothful in our duty, too impudent in our speech, and too intemperate in our cups. Moreover, we are all hasty and careless. We are all untrustworthy, dissatisfied, and ambitious. Every one of us, therefore, will find in his own breast the vice which he blames in another. Let us therefore be more gentle one to another. We are bad men living among bad men. There is only one thing which can afford us peace, and that is to agree to forgive one and another. Page 27. Seneca also warns us that revenge comes with its costs. Revenge takes up much time and throws itself in the way of many injuries, while it is smartening under one. We all retain our anger longer than we feel our hurt. Would anyone think himself to be in his perfect mind if he were to return kicks to a mule or bites to a dog? If animals are protected from our anger by their want of reason, you ought to treat all foolish men in the like manner. Quite the case, not gonna lie. Page 31. He turns toward another source of anger and resentment, envy. No man is satisfied with his own lot if he fixes his attention on that of another. And this leads to our being angry even with the gods because somebody precedes us, though we forget of how many we take precedence, and that when a man envies few people, he must be followed in the background by a huge crowd of people who envy him. Do you ask, what is your greatest fault? It is that you keep your accounts wrongly. You set a high value upon what you give and a low upon what you receive. The later bit is one of many gems one can gather from this wonderful book by Seneca. So I do want to repeat it because I misread it, I think. Do you ask, what is your greatest fault? It is that you keep your accounts wrongly. You set a high value upon what you give and a low one upon what you receive. So this is what you should be doing. It's not vice versa. It's not like, you want to get everything. And I don't know, this reminds me on Give and Take, I think, a book by Adam Grant, if I'm not wrong there. And if I'm not wrong there, it's been an amazing book about giving and taking, and that give us most often just in a better position long term. And of course, even though there's give us, take us, and something in between, which means that if you give something, you also want to get something back. There has to be a balance. But yeah, the taker obviously takes more than he gives, and the giver is more than he takes. In the long term, the giver is just the best off. Or, yeah, if this makes sense. I don't know if this sentence structure makes sense, but anyway. 39th page. He begins to explain to his friend Novatus how to deal with other people's anger. The next logical step after one has mastered his own. You should not attempt to allay the first burst of anger by words. It is death and frantic. The best treatment in the first stage of illness is rest. And of course, one thing we all know not to do is to tell someone who is angry to just calm down. It only makes things worse. To prove, and this is a quote, to reprove a man when he is angry is to add to his angry by being angry oneself. What? To reprove a man when he is angry is to add to his angry or anger by being angry oneself. Ultimately, argues Seneca, anger is a waste of precious time. And this is a quote, why should we, as though we were born to live forever, waste our tiny span of life in declaring anger against anyone? Why should days which we might spend in honorable enjoyment be misapplied in grieving and torturing others? Life is a matter which does not admit of waste, and we have no spare time to throw away. Page 42. And another quote, instead of acting thus, why do you not rather draw together what there is of your short life and keep it peaceful for others and for yourself? Why do you not rather make yourself beloved by everyone while you live and regretted by everyone when you die? And finally, let us keep our tempers in spite of losses, wrongs, abuse, or sarcasm, and let us endure with let us keep our tempers in spite of losses, wrongs, abuse, or sarcasm, and let us endure with magnanimity our short-lived troubles, while we are considering what is due to ourselves, as the saying is, and worrying ourselves death will be upon us. It has been a long essay already, but there are two more and very practical things I'd like to add. First, let me backtrack a bit to page 36, where we find a famous explanation of one of the crucial Stoic techniques, the evening meditation. I have done it now for close to 3 years, which with immense benefit of both insight and calm. I transcribe and highlight the full bit from Seneca because it is well worth considering it carefully. And this is like a long quote right now. I'm really gonna try to read it as well as I can. Today's reading part wasn't that nice, and I'm very sorry for that. But I try really hard to do this right now. The spirit ought to be brought up for examination daily. It was the custom of Sextius, when the day was over and he had betaken himself to rest, to inquire of his spirit. This is a quote, what bad habit of yours have you cured today? What vice have you checked? In what respect are you better? Anger will cease and become more gentle if it knows that every day it will have to appear before the judgment seat. What can be more admirable than this fashion of discussion the whole of the day's events? How sweet is the sleep which follows his self-examination. How calm and how sound and careless Is it when your spirit or when our spirit has either received praise or reprimand and privilege and daily plead with cause before myself, when the lamb is taken out of my sight and my wife, who knows my habit, has ceased to talk, I pass the whole day in review before myself and repeat all of that I have said and done. I conceal nothing from myself and omit nothing. For why should I be afraid of any of my shortcomings when it is in my power to say, I pardon you this time, see that you never do that anymore? In that dispute you spoke too continuously. Do not for the future argue with ignorant people. Those who have never been taught are unwilling to learn. You reprimanded that man with more freedom than you ought, and consequently you have offended him instead of amending his ways. In dealing with other cases of the kind, you should look carefully not only to the truth of what you say, but also whether the person to whom you speak can bear to be told the truth. A good man delights in receiving advice. All the worst men are the most impatient of guidance. And finally, here's my bullet list of Seneca's practical guide to anger management. Engage in preemptive meditation. I don't know what preemptive means, so I'm gonna look it up. Serving or intended to preempt for or forestall something, especially to prevent attack by this bridge. Relating to purchase of goods shares by one person or party before the opportunity is offered to others. Preemptive rights. Okay. Check anger as soon as you feel its symptoms. Don't wait or it will get out of control. The third point, associate with serene people, avoid irritable or angry ones. 1, 2, 3, 4. Play a musical instrument or purposefully engage in whatever activity relaxes your mind. 5th, seek environments with pleasing and not irritating colors. Don't engage in discussions when you are tired. Don't engage in discussions when you are thirsty or hungry, and deploy self-deprecating humor. Engage in cognitive distancing, what Seneca calls delaying your response. And the last one is change your body to change your mind. Deliberately slow down your steps, lower the tone of your voice, and impose to your body the demeanor of a calm person. And yeah, this is the end of it, and I'm very grateful that I went through it. And I might just also be reading the real one or the whole one as a podcast and as an audiobook or as whatever you're willing to call it. Would actually be amazing, would actually be quite fucking good. And I would appreciate that. So yeah, I wish you the best health and happiness and all success, and also hope that you're going to remind yourself and you're going to be remembered, which basically means being a good person and also being remembered as a good person, which is a fucking cool thing. 3 other questions that I have you are: why are you here? What are you trying to change? And what is bothering you the most? These 3 questions are hopefully going to show you your purpose and maybe even a business idea, which is a pretty fucking cool thing. Another question that I have you is: what could you particularly say that is really going to change somebody's life? What is it? What could you say? And yeah, with that being said, I'm hopefully going to see you next time. Bye-bye and have a nice day. I love you. Thank you.